Everybody, don't beat me up too bad. This is my first transportation sharing meeting. Hopefully I can get through this without too much grief. Okay. So let's do, was there a posting of the agenda?
Yes.
Do you have any public comment? None. We'll do consent calendar. Motion,
So moved.
have a motion and a second
Second.
and a second. We don't need to do.
Yeah, I can just do it reverse.
Okay, thank you.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I just would like to say thank you all for coming after we put out our plea.
More like begging.
Right.
Okay,
But there were donuts, so.
transportation working. Get some updates.
Okay, the infrastructure working group, will be meeting on Wednesday. I don't think any updates from them last month. And were there any major transit operators?
Zero.
Nothing.
There were two people.
Yeah.
So, no major updates on the transit
I
operators.
was wondering.
One of them was
Okay.
Okay, so, Dawn.
Metro Service Council meets on Friday, same time, same bat channel.
What are you doing? I mean, what are you gonna meet about?
We just have mostly our main reports. We don't have anything special, I don't believe. this month.
I saw there was an item about potential renaming of the Douglas station.
Yeah, that's because the buses aren't gonna go that particular way and such, so there's talk locally being generated about wanting to change that name, present it to the board.
Let's see, Caltrans, District 7. Sergio,
Morning, all. Can you hear me?
good morning.
Yes.
How are you all? So right now the district is preparing for the May and June CTC funds request. Essentially, any projects on the state highway system that need to allocate their construction capital or other phases. We've got an exercise internally here that we're trying to achieve for the May and June CTC. Nothing that really involves the COG, but just as an FYI, sometimes with the project schedules that I send the team, we have target RTL dates which are subject to move throughout the whole fiscal year. If there's ever a delay on that, the district requests a time extension to allocate those funds depending on how much time each project needs. So we're kind of undertaking that effort right now. Any projects, like I said, that are on the state highway system, whether they're shop or non-shop. So we're looking at our portfolio, reaching out to our external members, whether it be Metro, City of Los Angeles, or any other cities to let them know if they'll need an extension. So if any of your PMs from the cities see an inquiry on behalf of our district or behalf of Caltrans and the district, it's in regards to that. So currently, I think I've attached the legislative update, which breaks down each project by phase. So if there's any questions, I know David and I still need to coordinate to kind of present to get a better project list for the COG for everybody to kind of understand what's going on, where the project phases are, their completion dates. It's an ongoing effort. But at the current moment, no other updates. I'm not sure if there's any inquiries on behalf of the COG that I need to field or get in touch with the PMs or their area managers. Please let me know.
Okay, thanks, Sergio. Any questions for Sergio? Okay, hearing none. We're going to introduce Filbert. Filbert Wong has a presentation. Hi, Filbert. Morning. The Metro 105 Express.
Where should I present from? If you want to join at the table, that's fine.
Anywhere's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Morning, members of the committee. I'm Fulbert Wong. I'm the Director of Planning for Metro Express Lanes. I'm also here with Ron Macias with Metro Construction Relations. I'm here to speak on the 105 Express Lanes project. I understand from Ron and from Andy at the last meeting, or maybe a couple meetings ago, There were some questions from the committee on how the 105 express lanes will work, how the 110 express lanes are working, signage, the direct connectors. I'll touch on the questions that were asked previously on the project. So hopefully I answer the questions that the committee had. And then also, after I do that, Ron is going to touch on the pre-construction activities that are happening now, the upcoming construction activities, as well as construction outreach. So with that, I'll go to the next slide. So just a quick project overview. We are converting the existing HOV lane in each direction to express lanes, and we're adding a second express lane in each direction for virtually the entire 105 freeway. Segment 1 is between 405 and Central Avenue in orange. Segment 2 is in blue between Central Avenue and the 710. And in purple is segment 3 between the 710 and Studebaker. There are no residential right-of-way impacts for this project. It is a Measure M project. Measure M is providing 175 million for this project. And our total project cost is between 1.4 to 1.5 billion.
You want questions now?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, if there's no residential impacts, are there any other kind of impacts?
There is a possibility of a partial commercial impact, and that's something we're working through now.
And then
Segment 2.
the total cost you said is how much for Metro and where's the rest of it coming from?
So we currently have 175 million Measure M, 150 million from the state SCCP grant, and then the remainder is funded by tollback revenue obligations. So TIFIA and private financing will be about 1.1 billion. So we currently have 325 million.
So the others isn't secure yet.
It's not, it's in process, yeah.
You have enough to do segment 1.
Our plan is to have the TIFIA funding in place by the end of the year, so that would fully fund segment 1.
You have it for the segment 1 funds.
So segment 1 at this very moment is not fully funded.
No, but that's where you plan to have for that first part of it.
Yeah, so the funding that we have will be allocated to segment 1, yeah.
And is that TIFIA funding, is that being done by the contractor who's then going to be paid back by the revenues? Or is that being done by Metro, who's going to be paid back by the revenues?
Metro is going to be securing the TIFIA loan, and Metro is going to be operating the express lanes. I think maybe you're getting, is there going to be like a third party to do this?
Well, we know that in other places, the express lanes have been built with outside contractors who then collect the tolls to offset the cost of what they had built. I haven't seen that in the express lanes, but we've seen that in other kinds of these lanes.
Right, so no, there's no plan to do that. Metro will be operating the express lanes, just like we do on the 110 and 10. Okay. So just a little bit on the project. We are using non-standard lane and shoulder widths to minimize the right-of-way impact. So narrower inner shoulder, 4 foot left shoulder, a standard 10-foot right shoulder, but lanes will be narrowed from 12 to 11 feet. We do have some bridge widenings and reconstructed retaining walls and sound walls. We'll have channelizers separating the express lanes from the general purpose lanes. We do plan to implement an occupancy detection system to electronically verify the number of occupants in the vehicle. And we also, as part of this project, are doing an aux lane improvement between 710 and Long Beach. It's an aux lane gap closure to help improve operations around that interchange. Yes.
Can you help me understand I don't have a fast pass. Would these lanes charge you regardless of if you have the pass, or does it give you a fee if you don't have the pass?
Yeah, so if you do not have a transponder, you pay $8 plus the toll. If you do have and you have to have a switchable transponder. If you switch and you have
What does that mean?
some transponders, there's no switch setting. So on the Metro transponders, you can declare the number of occupants you have, 1, 2, 3, the setting on the transponder. So if you set it to the required number of occupants, then there's no toll. charged. But in some cases, I think some of the Bay Area toll operators have non-switchable transponders. So if you have a non-switchable transponder, then you would get charged the toll, whatever the toll is.
I've got a transponder that's just a little piece of electronic tape on my windshield,
Yeah.
obviously not switchable, correct?
Who is it issued by?
Fast Track.
Well, every agency issues transponders, so Metro does, Orange County, PCA does, San Diego does.
I imagine it
So-
probably came out of Orange County because. the
So
person
if
who
it,
did.
if it's a switchable, then it will work, no problem.
Yep,
So
I've got
you
the
have to-
same thing. I mean, I've got just a sticker in my windshield.
Yeah.
And
You're gonna pay no matter what is the bottom line.
is that the,
I think so. That's what he's saying, because you can't switch it to tell them that you have 2 or 3 people. So they're gonna assume that you just got a transponder, you won't have to pay the extra $8. Am I wrong?
If you have a non-switchable, I don't think you would pay the 8. The 8 is if you don't have a transponder at all.
I understand.
Yeah.
But you would pay no matter what. In other words, if I had 2 people in my car, but I didn't have a switchable transponder, you're gonna charge me.
I think so, yeah.
I think we get charged no matter what,
Mhm.
right? I mean, using, if I'm
Right.
driving the, 91 going to Palm Springs, example,
Right.
you can see, says, hey, here's the charge for the,
Mhm.
and even on the 110, right?
I think Clover's saying if you have a transponder that switches, let's say you have multiple people.
Right?
And you have a switchable one and you see you actually have 3 people in the car, then you don't get charged.
Yeah,
What
that
else?
was.
The original transponder that was issued by Metro was a switchable transponder because they have 2 people is good on the 110 freeway, but when you go on the 10 freeway, it has to be 3 people to be qualified for not paying in the carpool lane. So those of us with 2-seater cars get screwed no matter what.
Can you help me understand if these things are verified, why do we even have to have the transponder? Well, what is the purpose of the transponder? If they can verify how many people are in your car, what is the trans?
Yeah, the purpose of the transponder is to help enforce. Yeah, because in some other express lanes, they don't require it, but it's harder to enforce that way.
Okay, so there, yeah, because I've seen other express lanes that anyone can drive in them. Everyone's gonna be charged same amount, and there's just no transponder, right? Those exist.
I think I think TCA is that way, but TCA is a toll lane. TCA is not an express lane in Orange County.
So maybe that's a subtle difference of tolling
Tolling
versus.
versus-
express.
And when I was talking
Yeah.
about them that
Actually
were
not.
paying for it.
And what is the?
Yeah.
What is it?
Tolling, you don't need a transponder, everyone gets, so if you want to get on that lane, you just get charged.
Right,
Yeah.
how is that not just better than than needing a transponder? Like, what is the benefit to?
Yeah, the transponder goes to your account.
No,
If you don't have it, it has to go through the license place. Then I guess, has to go through the state. And then they figure out who owns that vehicle based on your license plate.
But it also is if you carpool. So if you're carpooling and you have 2 or 3 in the car, you don't get charged at all if you have a transponder. So that's why you would have a transponder for the carpool.
If you have the switchable transponder. What he's saying is if you don't have the switchable transponder, you're pretty much gonna get charged no matter what.
So there's no advantage to having 10 people in your car. You're gonna get charged, you're not gonna get,
Well, but if you have a switchable transponder, then
yeah, but if you
Switch to-
just have the little tag.
So it sounds like an issue is the switchable transponder or not to get
yeah, I don't.
benefits of this.
I don't know how many non-switchable transponders there are. I don't think in Southern California, anybody's issuing non-switchable transponders. I think they're all.
I
as far
would
as I
disagree
know.
with that completely.
I don't know.
Orange County has no switchable transponders whatsoever, and yet those transponders still work up here in fast
And
traffic.
I just have a sticker on my dashboard.
That I don't know.
I have both. Now I guess I'm gonna have to get the switchable one out of my drawer.
Let's just get one from Metro.
I hate to keep harping on the subject, but
Yeah.
what's the purpose of the express lanes? Because our current lanes are abused. Right, so what's the purpose of these express lanes? To do what?
The purpose of the express lanes is to incentivize carpooling, to maximize utilization of of that lane capacity. So if you have, because in a lot of cases, when you have two express lanes or two HOV lanes, there aren't enough carpools to fully utilize those.
Those HOVs are always used because, and 9 out of 10 of the vehicles aren't HOV qualified. Because there's no enforcement is the reality. I mean, you got,
Yeah, they're cameras, right? And you get a penalty fee sent to you.
No, he's talking about just HOV.
I'm talking HOVs.
Not the HOV.
HOVs, there's no penalty.
Had cameras that if you're in that lane and you don't have, bunch of people with you, then you get, fined.
If you, next time you go on the highway, just look in the HOV lane. 9 out of 10 times, those cars are not HOV.
I just assumed they were, getting a little thing in the mail saying,
Because there is no
Yeah,
enforcement.
actually, that's
So,
CHP has to.
but you're saying now we're gonna have sensors. That are gonna have the ability to ascertain whether I have 2 people in my car or just me and I'm still in the HOV.
Have you
anyway.
driven up those lanes on the 110 freeway? And you see the cameras up above you that are taking the pictures of you as you go by?
Well, those are,
That's express lanes.
Right.
As opposed to HOV.
but we're
lanes.
converting our HOV on the 405 that are. Right? Is that what we're talking about now?
On the one- on the
105.
105. Okay, HOV, we're converting our 105 HOV lanes
Right.
to all to
Express.
express lanes.
Right.
And so with an understanding that you have the means to pay based on your transponder being registered and all that.
and there's no particular incentive. They don't care anymore if you're carpooling or not, apparently.
Well,
No, that's not true.
when when express lanes were first put in place, we were told that we will adjust the amount that is you have to pay to be in that express lane because we guarantee if you're in the express lane, you'll be going 40 miles an hour or better, regardless of what's happening on the rest of the freeway. Is that a guarantee I get on the 105? If I'm paying to be in that express lane, am I guaranteed to get 40 miles an hour?
Guarantee that.
That's the way they do it.
Traffic forecast does forecast speeds to be above 45 miles an hour. Yes.
Okay, and are you forecasting it with or without these little stickers on there that allow people who decided to buy one kind of car versus another, that they get to be able to get into those lanes?
Well, we assume that, yeah, I mean, we try to build all those assumptions into our analysis. Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, guys. I apologize for being late, and this may have already been addressed, but a bit on that last point. My experience on the 110, I do not doubt that we get people moving at 40 miles an hour. My concern is that there's so few of them because the pricing is set at such a deterrent level. And my concern on the El Segundo end of the 105 is that we will not be trading any lack of congestion or incenting people into those lanes. It tends to just lead to more constricted traffic in the non-express lanes, though I could be wrong. So I didn't know if we covered a data point on that I was starting to. If so, I apologize for retreading.
No, it wasn't brought up.
Yeah, I'll be getting to that later. But because we're adding capacity on the 105, that will help improve operations on the entire freeway. So through a combination of pricing as well as adding capacity.
Does the pricing vary? I think, does the pricing vary or is that fixed period?
No, it varies.
Okay, that's,
So I'm gonna get to that.
okay.
Yes.
I would say to that point, though, some of the pricing is stunning. I mean, it is, $19 to get to PCH.
Yeah, I mean, the pricing reflects, and I'll get into what the toll range is. The pricing reflects demand and what we need to price and in order to manage congestion. Yeah.
And it's not the price for anyone to do that. It's just if you want the express lane. It's the
Right.
price if you want to go fast.
Correct. The general purpose
Faster
lanes
than,
are.
yeah. I think that you'll go faster because the idea is you will go faster in these lanes. It'll be less congested because you're charging this amount to go fast.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you're paying the toll if you're a single occupant vehicle. So if
Yeah.
you're,
Even in an EV?
so EVs currently get a 15% discount. but they're not toll free.
Oh, good. Okay, so everybody pays. You gotta pay to play.
Yeah, unless you're a carpool. So.
With a switch.
Yeah,
Carpool
so
with the
you're-
trans-
And then there's a question of, can you verify carpool?
Right, so that's.
Anybody can go, I'm in a carpool.
Yeah, so we have a combination of, we do have CHP enforcement,
Yeah.
the express lanes, and then occupancy detection.
Do hybrids get a break?
No,
I don't know, I
but-
know somebody got a ticket just last week moving into the
Really?
HOV lane when it wasn't broken.
I was gonna say, I can share my personal story. I moved here from the Bay Area many years ago. I have my old Golden Gate Bridge fast track. And I drive my daughter and her friend to school near Figueroa and Adams from Westchester where I live. And for months, we were charged the maximum amount because I naively thought that my fast track in the Bay Area would work here. And I saw I was being charged a lot of money. And then I got the Express Lanes thing, set it to 3 people. Nothing has ever happened to me since I've done that. So it works when you get the correct transponder. But if you do the Bay Area thing like I did naively, it didn't work.
Do you change it when you don't have 3 people?
I do, yeah, it's right there. And like, I did it to 2 the other day, but I keep it as a default on 3. I do this drive like at least twice a week with my daughter and her classmate to school.
Have you ever got caught for not having 3 people in the car?
Well, I think what happens, for when I got penalized, I got charged the maximum amount going on from the 110 to Figueroa on the 110. Even though I had 3 people in the car because I didn't have the right transponder. So that was just my user error. So,
Emergency vehicles are not exempt either.
yeah, but that was.
But that just goes back to the communication associated with the project, right? I mean, just making sure that everybody knows what they're getting or not getting. Right? Because like I said, I'll start bringing my transponder, I've got the sticker, but I also got a couple transponders around. So if it behooves me to bring both or have both, okay.
Well, the Palm Springs one that you use, I use it. It's, if you have 3, they have a 3 lane.
Right.
So you have to move over and you don't get charged.
Okay, so that alleviates the transponder.
Yeah, but you have to have the 3.
Right, you got to move into that lane, yeah, okay.
Okay,
That's
let's let them finish.
91. Our express lanes don't work the same way that S91 does.
Okay.
We don't have a declaration lane. Okay, so 110, we do travel time analysis on the 10 and 110. So what we do is we have 2 vehicles driving end to end, same time, one in the express lanes, one in the general purpose lanes, and we compare to see what the travel time difference is. So I'll show you here what the northbound, southbound difference is. So on the 110, the time savings is 11 to 12 minutes during the AM, once PM peak. On the 10, it's between 10 and 15 minutes. So that's we do these regularly to see how the express lanes are performing versus the general purpose lanes. And then what we do with the revenue, we do transit subsidies. Currently, we grant 8 million to Metro, Foothill, Gardena, and Torrance Transit. And since inception, we've granted 74.4 million. The J line ridership currently is about 30,000 per week. And if you're wondering, it's similar to what it was pre-COVID. We get a little bit less weekday travel now and a little bit more weekend travel. So it averages out to about 30,000 per week. We've done 3 rounds of net toll grants, 112 million over those 3 rounds. And we also do transit rewards where you can get toll credits if you use transit that's operating on the 10 or the 110 express lanes. And to date, we've granted 253,000 in transit rewards.
Does the 105 have complimentary bus service that you're going to be funding?
That's to be determined. We haven't determined how that transit subsidy will work out on 105.
So it isn't necessarily the same thing.
Not operating on the freeway, and there's no transit stops on 105 for buses.
How do you qualify and apply for transit rewards?
Your tap card is linked to your Express Lanes account, and so you have to be using a transit service that operates on the 10 or the 110. So J line, I think it's 1X, 4X, I think it is.
So I have to tie my card into my account.
Your Express Lanes.
My
account,
Express,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Joe line all the time.
So on the 110, so just a little bit about Metro toll policy. Currently, the range that we have, minimum toll during off-peak periods is 10 cents a mile. During peak periods, it's 35 cents a mile, and the current maximum is 280 per mile. Metro board policy allows a 10 cent per mile increase up to 3 times per quarter if we need to maintain performance. Up to 3 times per year, yeah. Sorry, yeah, it's 10 cents per quarter up to 3 times a year. So the past couple of years, we have been implementing those 10 cent increases. If you're an Express Lanes account holder, you get an email saying that this rate increase is happening. So it doesn't mean that the toll rate is going up by 10 cents. It means the range is going up. And if we need to charge more to maintain traffic flow, then we do. So the toll rates forecast for the 105 during the peak periods are 57 cents per mile to 281 per mile in 2028. During the midday, it's a lot less, between 11 cents and 31 cents a mile in 2028. As for comparison purposes, on the 110, the current range is 11 cents to 272 per mile. So it's very similar to what we're forecasting the toll range will be on the 105. And so we use the revenue generated to pay for operations and maintenance, all the roadside equipment, customer service functions, CHP enforcement, freeway service patrol. We will have debt, as I mentioned earlier, on the 105, so we'll need to repay that debt, and we'll do net toll grants as funding allows. And so the express lanes are entirely self-funded. Metro Express Lanes doesn't receive any funding for operations and maintenance from Metro. It's funded entirely by toll revenue. Next slide, I guess.
What policy dictates where the funding or where the revenues are spent? Is that a Metro policy, or is that a?
There is state law, and the state law is 149.9, I think it is, State Streets and Highways Code. So that provides a general framework of how net toll revenue is to be used. And then 105 is 149.7, I think it is, State Highway Code. So
Like, is any of it going towards like new transit projects in these areas? Like, I know that's what New York is doing with congestion pricing. They're fueling, like, they're using that revenue to expand their subway system.
Yeah.
Is that what we're doing? or-
Well, how net toll revenue is used ultimately will be a Metro Board decision. So state law just says that you have to use the revenue in the corridor it was generated, but it doesn't necessarily dictate, where to put that funding. So
Okay.
that would be a Metro Board decision.
Okay,
And
But Chris-
they're already doing those decisions. I don't know if it's on a yearly basis or whatever, along the 110 freeway to be, and I think that it's no more than 3 miles either
Correct.
side
3
of
miles.
the freeway. That's where it has to
Yeah.
be spent. And the local jurisdictions come in with requests for improvements, and then Metro makes a decision.
gotcha.
That begs the issue of it has to be spent along the corridor, because all the other money is spent somewhere else. If you're expanding the system and you're gonna do the San Fernando Valley, you're gonna use our money to do it, the money that people are paying here. So it doesn't really follow.
The people on the freeway aren't necessarily from the communities the people that are paying aren't necessarily from communities
No.
within 3 miles of the freeway.
Right, but mostly they are. I mean, I would think that mostly they are. Going to work and they're, those are the people in the area.
At least close by. Go ahead, Chris.
For the CHP enforcement that the revenue is used for, is that strictly for operations, or does any of that go to pay CHP pensions?
It's for enforcement, so it's their whatever their hourly rate is what we pay. I don't know how that gets to what that hourly rate comprises of.
No,
but
so they'll charge you a fully burdened rate that's covering the natural cost of pension, but we're not obligating ourselves to the 3 at 50 CHP 24-year-old. Okay.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so on the 105, so similar to what we do on the 10 and the 110, we do travel time runs on the 105. So this is data from November of last year. So the performance westbound AM peak, 36 minutes to go 16 miles. So that's an average speed of 26 miles an hour. In the HOV lane, it's 30 minutes, average speed 32 miles an hour. So a little bit better, but not meeting federal performance requirements, which is 45 miles per hour or better. In the eastbound PM, general purpose lane, 65 minutes. So that's an average speed of 15 miles an hour to go 16 miles. HOV lane, 51 minutes, average speed 19 miles an hour. If you're going 65 miles an hour over 16 minutes, I mean, 16 miles, it's going to take you a little less than 20 minutes or so at a free flow speed. So it's not performing very well. Westbound AM peak between 6 to 9. Eastbound PM peak is a very long peak from 1 to 7. So it's a 6-hour peak in the afternoons. So the project, we think will reduce general purpose lane times about 10%. But there would be a very significant performance improvement to the express lanes compared to how the HOV lanes are performing today. And the performance improvement is a combination of increased lane capacity and dynamic pricing. So we maximize utilization by allowing single occupant vehicles to pay to use the express lanes, but we charge an amount that's high enough to maintain those speeds and manage demand. On the direct connectors, I think this was a question asked, so that we are going to be adding toll gantries to toll the direct connectors. And so we will price them independently to manage demand. We're not adding any capacity to the direct connectors, and the general purpose lane ramp connectors will remain unchanged as they are today.
I'm sorry, did I hear you say that you will accept single occupancy vehicles in the HOV or express lanes as long as they pay their money? Without any other requirements?
That's what it is.
That's the purpose of the express lane.
That's the whole thing. That's the whole purpose.
Pay to play.
It's a money making.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
My wife does it, much to my chagrin.
So have you done any analysis of what this new freeway configuration is going to do to the, like, when you come into the 110 from the 105, it's already a mess. So have you looked at what it's going to do to the traffic, like going downtown, northbound to the 110?
Well, you can do that now if you want to use the express lanes on the 110. You can get it on the 105.
I know, but I'm wondering if you're going to increase, what you're saying is you're sort of increasing the capacity. You know, more people in the, you're going to have people paying in lanes in the HOV lane, and then you're going to have a little bit more room in the other. So if that's going to happen, aren't you going to exacerbate the 110 going and when you go on?
Yeah,
Has
I
any
mean,
analysis been done?
no, we have not. So we'll see how.
Can we ask for an analysis? Because it seems to me we keep adding to the things that are coming on to freeways, and yet we don't look at the freeways that we're affecting. How do we get an analysis of what's going to happen to the 110?
That's something we can look into.
Please.
But I guess in theory, it's not gonna change the number of vehicles that are going from one freeway to the other, right? We're just, I mean, I understand if you change the flow, but from what I'm hearing, we're not changing the flow per se. We're, once you, let's say on the 105, then all of a sudden we've changed the configuration of the 105, right? Did I say that right?
But it will reduce the flow because you've got less people in the fast track because they can't afford it, they don't want to spend the money, and so they're all in the main, coming on, in the main lanes.
On the other hand, as you've just said, you can get people that are single occupancy vehicles who are now in the express lane. So I think you're right. I think more people will come from the express lanes, 2 of them, to merge onto the 110 2 express lanes. Maybe not much difference in the regular lanes, but in the express lanes, I think that Jackie has a point. Needs to be studied.
It could deteriorate the 110. I have
Express.
to pay twice then? I have to pay if I get onto the 105, and then when I I'm gonna get another charge to get onto the 110.
You'll see, it would be like one line on your bill. So there won't be a separate line.
Right, but no, but I want to know as I'm driving. I want to make that decision as I'm driving. How am I gonna? I might want to get out of the express lane and not pay twice, or, I mean, how am I gonna figure that out as a motorist?
Theoretically, you're gonna see a sign like that one that's pictured there that tells you how much it's gonna cost you if you continue along in that lane.
Right, so I have to get out. I mean, there might be a place I want to get out.
Right. Well, so theoretically, you're seeing that before the opportunity to get out of the lane.
I don't exactly know how you model it, but it just seems to be, we ought to look at what it's gonna do to the other freeways. You're looking at what it's gonna do to this one, but you're not looking at how that impacts anything it's gonna connect to.
Go ahead, Chris.
But
Sorry.
I would say, to add to the cauldron of study, I think the concept that the commuters eastbound in the afternoon are going to pay these rates as opposed to using HOV, I do not think intuitively is sensitive to the demographics of those commuters. You know, the Green Line was built, and we've had a great deal of discussion about how it would be routed based upon the workers going westbound and being sensitive to their concerns about where they are ending up at work. I think that this is charging these rates and expecting the people who we're competing with on the Green Line to pay them. I don't think is at least intuitively sensitive to the demographics who are going eastbound toward Norwalk in these rush hour traffics.
You, anybody else?
Yeah, I would just say, the toll rates are set by demand and what we need to charge to maintain speeds. So that's the revenue studies that we do in the toll rate analysis is reflective of the need to maintain traffic flow and maintain speeds in the
Nothing
express.
to do with the
Yeah,
demographics.
that may be the case, but my point being, someone going from downtown back to Palos Verdes in the evening may be more likely to pay $19 than someone going from working at the airport toward Norwalk. So you could indeed have a rate accurately set to what it costs to maintain it. You could also very likely have no one paying it.
You showed in your last slide, I believe it was, that that you can increase the speed going along based on the finance. I'm lost. I don't know where I'm going with this. I apologize. I had a good question, but it left me.
Okay, well.
Come back, come back.
Comes back to you. Yeah. We do that, doesn't it?
Okay, continue.
Okay, so signage, so we do have signage in advance of the ingress egress location. So yeah, we do have dedicated ingress egress locations. We don't have continuous access. And the entrance and exit points are about where they are today. So you're familiar with where they are on the 105. They're for the most part where they are today. So the advanced signage is half a mile ahead, the first static sign there in green. And then we have pricing signs about a quarter of a mile in advance of the ingress egress to tell you what the toll rate is. And so we tell you what the toll rate is to the next exit as well as to the end of the corridor. And so we are going to be adding a pricing sign on southbound 110 to tell you what the 105 express lanes toll rates will be. And we have currently signs on the 105 that tell you what the 110 toll rates are.
Okay, I remember my question. You showed that our HOV lanes are performing below federal standards.
Mhm.
And obviously, this is a desire to get it above that.
Right.
What happens if you just leave it alone? Do the feds come down on you, start charging you? Any negative consequences?
Caltrans does what they call an HOV degradation report I think it's every year to document what the speeds are as well as propose mitigation strategies to increase those speeds to meet standards. So that's what's done currently.
But there's no federal penalty.
At the moment, there hasn't been, but there could be.
Well, this is an awful expensive way to get around a quote federal penalty that doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, the project is improving mobility and it provides revenue for transit reinvestment. So, I mean, but degradation is part of the equation, but you know, there are mobility benefits in the corridor. We do net toll grant reinvestment in the corridor. So, you know, there's a lot of benefits in addition to addressing degradation.
Well, what about what Jackie said, where they're taking the money that's generated in this corridor, but doing it, spending it on projects in a different location, a different part of the county? Is that possible, or must those funds go within 3 miles along this corridor?
That hasn't happened to date. The net toll grant guidelines do allow funding for regionally significant projects if it's determined that it's regionally significant, but to date, that hasn't happened. So all the projects have been within 3 miles on either side.
Thank you.
But it's Metro's plan to do that.
No, I'm not aware of that.
I thought it was.
I heard it's their plan to build express lanes everywhere. There's now an HOV lane.
Yeah, where there is, and there's no other funding.
Okay,
So
yes.
you mentioned the revenue sharing agreement.
Mhm.
How long is that agreement good for? Is it in perpetuity?
The net toll grants?
Yes.
Yeah, so we do it at we started doing it every 2 years. So we did one in 2014, 2016. There was a long gap. COVID happened. So then the next one after that was in 2023. So, and I can't tell you when the next one will be, but I mean, it's regularly done, but at what interval, I can't tell you when round 4 is going to be. Yes.
I just want to ask one more. I know you kind of answered it, but I'm trying to understand why the transponder is necessary. I know you said enforcement, but if you have the means to verify, if someone is carpooling, if they have a transponder or not, is it not easier to just make it very clear, if you're in this lane, you pay this much for this many people, and allow folks to drive in it if they want to pay that with or without a transponder? What is the transponder doing for you on your end that's making it so much easier?
Partly, well, so when you use the express lanes, there are license plate readers, but sometimes license plates are obscured. And so if there's no license plate, we won't know who you are if you have it, unless you have a transponder. So there's a redundancy there to back up in case we can't read the trip. But sometimes weather happens also. Okay. If it's raining, it's hard to read a license plate.
So it's a backup.
So it's a backup system also.
Got it. Thank you.
It also saves you $8 every trip.
Right, but they would readjust the pricing if we didn't have to have a transponder, I imagine. But yeah, I understand that.
They also take $1 a month on the transponders.
Gotcha. Nice.
Sure. Okay, at this point, I'll turn the presentation over to Ron.
Thank you. Yeah, just wanted to follow up, since the last time we presented on the project in reference to the construction project itself. As stated in that last meeting, we were going to proceed with early preparation work activities, and we have began. In January, we're out there doing some work activities, some minor work activities in advance of the start of major construction, going out there verifying utilities, and doing analysis of subsurface conditions, some pre-construction surveys and other type of surveys and analysis of the entire area. Next slide, please. We've been out there typically pretty much during the nighttime hours, late night hours, that is, with lane closures and ramp closures, occasional connector closures here and there, but typically closures starting at 9 p.m. typically in most cases till 6 a.m. doing these work activities, predominantly during the weeknight hours, occasionally some late night weekend hours. We would do some work on some of the adjacent streets during the daytime at some point in the future. And these are some street locations that are immediately adjacent to the corridor, but that has not been scheduled just yet by the contractor. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
But if you don't have it fully funded, and this is such a precarious world with the federal government and everything else, and you have to finish other projects for the Olympics, how do you know you're going to have the funding?
We've been working with, well, so part of it is doing a traffic and revenue study. That's the first step. And then submitting a letter of intent to TIFIA. So we've done that. We've gotten ratings from rating agencies. So the financing piece of this is well underway, and we haven't seen any. Of course, you know, as you said, things can happen, but to date, we haven't seen any red flags that would suggest that we won't be able to secure that funding.
It's just the financing cost might go up
I could, yeah.
Could go down.
down to, right,
Can you go back a slide, just on the last bullet there?
No better than that, Tom.
Work at city street locations will be scheduled at all time. What kind of work is that?
So it's verifying utilities.
Okay, okay.
Like some lane closures here and there, and in the daytime hours are between 9 AM, 3 PM. And those have not been scheduled yet. But basically, again, just verification of what's there,
Okay, okay.
analyzing the subsurface conditions, some surveying, those type of minor work activities in advance of the major work.
Okay, thank you.
And pretty soon, we're going to proceed with some additional preparatory work activities anticipated next month, where we will restripe the travel lanes on the freeway. And this is for the contractors, purpose of the contractor having a work zone on the outer edges of the freeway, and we'll restripe back to the freeways to allow for traffic to operate as normal while construction is taking place. We'll be installing some concrete barriers, K-rail, and then we will do some landscape removal just to prepare the work zone in advance of the start of major construction. I do want to highlight, in order to restripe the travel lanes on the freeway, we will have to implement some directional freeway closures in order to perform this work, but during the late night hours. So typically, we'll start lane closures at 9 o'clock, take a lane at a time, with the closure in one direction around midnight, lasting until 5 AM. So typically in one direction, it may take about roughly a week to perform the restriping. In segment one, that is, again, all this is in segment one, I want to reiterate, between Sepulveda to Central Avenue. So this is what the plan is for next month. And of course, we will be getting communications out and outreach to the community to inform the activities that are upcoming. And as always, the construction relations team continues to perform outreach and engage the community regarding the project. We'll continue our outreach efforts, getting construction notices out, having community meetings, briefings, electronic communication, e-blasts, social media posts. And again, we will be getting construction notices out to inform the public of these upcoming work activities. And I believe last time we coordinated with Colleen to work with you all to help further disseminate our information. And we hope we can continue doing that with respect to upcoming work activities, these construction notices that I mentioned regarding these upcoming activities. And also, we plan to have another community meeting very soon as well. So we hope to work with you all in getting this information disseminated to the public as well.
Question on that?
Yes.
Can you describe a little bit in more detail? So the construction notices, are you flyering? And when you say community outreach, what do you exactly mean by
Yeah,
that?
the notices are disseminated door to door within a quarter-mile radius of the activity. But we also e-blast out to our project database, work with entities to further get the word out to other constituents and contacts. We go out and meet with other stakeholder groups too and have meetings. So there's a number of ways we'll get the information out regarding the construction notices, having of course posted on our website as well.
Okay, we're kind of running a little bit over, but there was a question in the chat. Yeah.
About the non-standard 11-foot lanes. Have these been studied, or are there any existing examples? Also, is a barrier between general purpose and express lanes being installed? There are a lot of motorcycles that use the current buffer area.
Yes, so we are planning to put channelizers in the median between the express lanes and the general purpose lanes. So be a 2-foot buffer, and in that buffer there will be channelizers. And then the other question was on non-standard. Yeah, so Caltrans has a process, what they call a DSDD. It's a design standard decision document where every non-standard feature has to be analyzed and documented to justify that that is not resulting in a safety issue. So we went through that process with Caltrans, and Caltrans approved that DSDD for the non-standard features. The 10 express lanes have a very similar configuration where the express lanes are 11 feet wide. Most of the general purpose lanes are 11 feet except for the outside lane, which is 12 feet. So the 10 express lane widths are very similar to what the 105 will be.
Okay, thank you. Okay. It's a hot topic. There's a lot of questions, so if there's more that you need to talk to them about, I'm sure we can do that off key. Okay, so we're gonna move on. We have Metro, I'm sorry, Measure M, update. Procedure.
David.
David?
Okay, so this was the item we had tried to bring to the committee last month. Didn't have a quorum, so we brought it back today. Over the summer of last year, the infrastructure working group, they started working on updates to our Measure M sub-regional programs. One of the major changes is the suggested creation of a local allocation program, which is an additional way to help allocate funds in the Measure M MSP money that we get from Metro each year. The idea was to help ensure cities that either don't have capacity or maybe are smaller and don't have staff or staffing issues, help get them some Measure M funds outside of the competitive process, something that would be allocated by a formula that is sort of not guarantee, but pretty much guaranteed funds that they could use for a Measure M eligible project. The recommendation is a 10% allocation. So each annual allotment that we get from Metro, 10% off the top would be set aside into this local allocation program. And then the amount is then determined for each city based on a formula. The other 90% would just remain the same as we do today in our competitive process. The local allocation formula is suggested to be a mixture between a city's centerline road miles and their percentage of COG dues. And so on page 17, attached exhibit 1 is the approximate allocation percentage. We have a few small refinements still being done with centerline road miles for a couple cities. But the kind of pink column there is about the each city's allocation of that 10%. The annual columns going out the next 10 fiscal years are projections that we received through the ITC conversation. So these aren't exact numbers. They're Metro's sort of best guesses at this point. But we only get the actual allocation 1 year at a time from Metro. The rationale behind centerline road miles was that was a relatively good way to factor in the amount of roadways that a city manages. And then the COG dues portion takes into consideration the city's population and budget size. Let's see. The next steps, if this is approved by the board, will be to set some actual kind of guidance policies around the use of the local allocation program funds. Kind of high level, the projects are still going to have to be approved by the COG board and the Metro board for eligibility. The local allocation is just a way to help allocate funds. But at the end of the day, they still operate within the same Measure M MSP rules and requirements. We were thinking that each city should be able to maintain their 1 year of allocation for 5 years. So they can kind of cobble together funds for a project, but we don't want to incentivize the city to hold on to these funds indefinitely and not use them. And so the current thinking is that on year 6, if those funds have not been programmed towards a project, that first year of funds would return to the competitive program for allocation that way. And then we wanted to give the city some flexibility to sort of either work together, or if they're not going to be using their local allocation, loan it or gift it to another city. Rolling Hills, for example, they will receive a small amount per the formula based on their membership in the COG and their dues, the dues and population. But because they have no public roads, they don't get any formula for that. So they'll get a little bit. And since they don't have public roads, they would be able to give their portion away to another city, sort of like what they do in the local return programs on Props AC and Measures R and M. We were thinking that the city should be able to accelerate some of their local allocation funds from future years if the program has capacity to do so. And then we were thinking that an awarding subcommittee would be formed from the IWP to help with the evaluation of allocation recommendations going forward. We will come back with a more thorough drafting of all of these proposed policies once the board approves the local allocation concept. I'm going to stop there, I think, for now, and then answer any questions.
Questions?
Quick question.
Yes.
Yes.
How did the working group arrive at this new LAP criteria?
The use for the formula.
Yes.
So the dues portion of it considers the city's population size and budget. And then the road miles section factors in the roadways that they either maintain or do improvements upon.
So when you say population size and budget, so this differential or percentage, I guess, would be developed. Does that prejudice a smaller city with a larger budget?
So for example, in the COG dues, El Segundo has a small population, but a large budget. So it kind of washes out there. Carson has a larger population, but a smaller budget. So I think it washes out overall in the COG dues formula.
Okay. And then second, what is the benefit / difference for smaller city LAP recipients in applying a criteria equally weighted between the COG annual dues and centerline road miles per city versus just a plain 10% geographic equity LAP?
I don't think we've done the actual math of that.
Okay, I asked this because using the MSP allocation projections that were made available by Metro to the Inglewood Transit Connector team, the COG staff created a 10-year projection of the LAP, and I think that's Exhibit 1.
Mm-hmm.
The LAP set aside would begin with the fiscal year 27-28 allocations. Okay, with the creation of the LAP, the subcommittee also revised MSP project selection criteria to remove and reallocate the geographic equity points. That's important to us. And although the measures and the metrics vary between the Measure M HEOI and the Measure M TSMIP programs, the points allocated to each were made the same. So the question is this: what are the geographic equity points, and how does removing them and reallocating them impact the project selection criteria?
So the local allocation program stemmed from a conversation between the cities about geographic equity, and they were not able to come up with measures that they felt accurately could be calculated or measured in the competitive program. And so there were some geographic equity points proposed in the competitive selection criteria. And so what they ultimately recommended was taking those out and then instead creating this formula allocation so that all cities were guaranteed some amount of MSP funds. If that makes sense.
And that doesn't make sense, but here's the thing though, it doesn't take into account the fact that everything isn't equal. If you have a city like ours that provides a vehicle to bring millions of people into the region that will spend money in other cities in the South Bay, it seems to be to our detriment as it relates to a global project. And so I just want to register that concern because there's been a lot of spillover effect in other cities due to the 4.5 to 5 million people a year that come here. Next year, it'll probably be 400 events. This year, there'll be 400 events. So I just want to keep that in mind that geographic equity should be geographic equity as it pertains to projects as how they impact the entirety of the South Bay. And that's just what I want to say.
Wouldn't that be from the regional?
I think the subcommittee felt that that was essentially captured still in the regional significance measures of the competitive program. And so a large regionally significant project in one city will receive higher points in the competitive scoring for that measure. So that impact is still factored in, just not within the local allocation program set aside.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, so that kind of, any other questions on the local allocation?
One over there.
Yes.
David, you had shared that this is in response, is trying to solve a problem of capacity of smaller cities.
Not necessarily solve the capacity problem,
No,
but a problem that arose from capacity.
And that this is a potential solution of many solutions to address that.
Correct. Yes.
And so I guess my question is how would a 10% local allocation of just pure funding augment or support a city's ability or capacity to develop projects, propose them, and deliver them?
So I think the thinking was that it would give a certainty about the funding availability for the smaller cities. So let's say they didn't have capacity to apply in year one.
Right.
They know by year 4 or 5, they will have X amount of dollars and can take that time to draft their application kind of on their own cycle, as opposed to losing out on a cycle year after year during the competitive program where they may not have the staffing availability to put together an application today, but they will next year. That gives them more time to develop their applications.
So that, I mean, for the previous, so the MSP program has been going on for several years now. Have you seen a city that just planned over 3 years and proposed a project in year 3? Because in theory, they can do that now.
In theory, they could. I have not seen that. Some of the smaller cities that don't really have large Measure M project lists either submitted in year 1 or have not submitted since. And so we were thinking that by trying this local allocation and again, it's just we could do this for 5 years and see how it works, and then decided it didn't do anything and go back to what we did before. I think the idea was that some of the smaller cities that have either had staff turnover or just smaller staffs overall would know that they have a certain amount of money to apply for and could then just plan accordingly.
Did the infrastructure working group actually solicit feedback from the smaller members?
Yes, they were in the subcommittee. They were involved. One in particular, not putting Libby down the spot, but the city manager was very interested in this whole idea because they had not had the capacity to apply in years before, and so he was involved in the drafting of all of this.
Okay, so it sounds like this time, the security of knowing that there'll be funding available
Yeah.
could help with the capacity
I think so, yeah,
potentially.
potentially, yeah.
And I think it's really important that we look at how it's rolling out. Does this really work? Is it realizing?
Solving the problem that.
Right, is it realizing, but we can't really know until we try.
Pilot it.
10% of the Measure M monies for this region are going into this LAP, the local allocation program.
Right.
Okay. And I guess I don't understand Mayor Butts or your comment about what if we just do the 10%? Well, you're back to the same problem. You got 16 cities. How do you divide up 10% between 16 cities? Are you simply gonna give everybody the same amount? This at least gives some kind of a way to give back to those who are actually looking to use the funds in some kind of manner. I don't see that the 10% works personally.
Okay, you need a,
Chris, did you have a comment or a question? I thought you had anything.
Yeah, I was just gonna, and I don't want to belabor it, but thematically, this is about a resource push because small cities on a resource pull, it's very difficult for them to allocate. Well, the presumption in using our staff and I work with Elias, it can be difficult to allocate staff time around projects that may never be funded because that leads to sort of this great vacuum of time spent. Whereas there's more certainty on a funding apparatus, it's easier for a smaller city to allocate limited resources. That's the concept. I would agree, though, if 2028 rolls around and we look and those cities are not making use of those resources, then it's probably time to shift the program a bit and reinvestigate it. But I think it is certainly well intentioned to benefit some cities that are really thin on resources.
Let's see, I think the last thing I need to point out, the subcommittee also discussed, and the infrastructure working group also discussed, the current local match policy. So staff had originally, brought up this discussion because, the sub-regional programs are funding, fully funding the vast majority of projects because they fall underneath the threshold for a local match. And over the last couple of years, we've had to do very limited calls for projects because we've had more limited funding available. So I think staff had originally thought that if we were to lower that threshold where a local match was required at a lower number, you'd be able to create capacity for more projects. The IWG and subcommittee didn't really, I think, want to go that route. And so their recommended local match policy change was to increase the increment 2, which is at 20 million to 35 million, to 20 million to 50 million. And then increment 3, from 35 to 75 to 50 to 75. And so that's the exhibit 3 document. We just picked a $70 million project example. And it's a little complicated, but the local matches are kind of like income tax. They're different tiers. And so all projects, regardless of the total cost, the first 20 million of the projects are always 100% funded by the center. And then that increment between 20 and 35 or proposed 20 and 50 would have that proposed match breakdown. And so on a hypothetical $70 million project, the proposed local match policy would equate to an average of 76% local, 76% sub-regional and 24% local share, as opposed to what it would be today of 63% and 37%.
I don't think this was scientific, but yeah,
No, it wasn't. It was just through discussion. At the end of the day, it will likely not have a huge impact on the programs or the funding capacity overall. I think when we did the initial math, 90% of the projects are under $20 million. And so I don't think there's much impact, positive or negative.
The real question is whether you want to lift the cap from 35 to 50.
And so that's pretty much it on the Measure M policy updates.
Did you
We would
say,
look for
did you say 90% are under 20 million?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact number, but of the 150 projects, I would say at least 90% in Measure R and M fall below $20 million. And then the vast majority, I think we have one or two that are above that kind of 50 million threshold.
You need to move on. So what?
Yeah, so
what's the
we'd
motion?
be asking for a motion to recommend board approval of the IWG's recommendation.
And the recommendations are creating a local.
Creating a local allocation program, the updated project selection criteria, and the local match recommendation.
I have a question. On the project selection criteria, I know that you shared that we haven't used it, but there's a likelihood of using that now going forward.
Yeah, so historically, we've been very lucky to be able to approve all projects that were submitted that were eligible projects. So we've never actually had to use the selection criteria. As we've kind of programmed projects and things get more expensive, this will likely be used at some point in an upcoming, either this cycle that we're current, or this upcoming cycle, or a future one in the not too distant future, unless cities are not applying for projects.
So when I'm looking at the measures, there's a lot. And they seem quite vague. So I'm unclear of, do you have current metrics that you're using to quantify measures for which you are evaluating the projects?
Yeah, this is what we would have. And you would have a scoring subcommittee that would essentially evaluate their interpretation of a project's application against these.
That seems a little subjective and because they have associated points.
Mhm.
And so how, for example, mobility accessibility improved for users, 30 points, these 4 bullets. Does it mean to eliminate trips? What does it mean to relieve congestion? Is it a yes or no? Then how would that break down to 30 points? Who would get 10 points? Who would get 20 points? Who would get all 30? And so I'm unclear how just using this would help evaluate fairly across projects and fairly allocate points per selection criteria.
Wasn't it like the Harvey Ball exercise, which is you have to make your best guess estimates on.
Is it all or nothing with the points? Or is it like you get the 30, or can you get 15 of the 30 available?
So
Yeah.
you could get 15 of the
Right.
30, yeah, it's not necessarily an all or nothing.
And then you can put it along a scale and you say, the top 50% of projects that scored this much are the first year and they get the funding and then we evaluate. So I guess that kind of process that Metro has done, I would see benefit from a more systematic approach with a clear methodology so that there's a lot of transparency in how projects are evaluated.
If it's the committee's wish, we could definitely ask IWG to work on more specifics around it. Because at the end of the day, it will be used next year at the earliest, in our fall of 25 into 26 ALPA projects.
I'm just not sure, and when you see the vast differences in all the projects, how we can get very specific.
It would probably, I would think that it would have to maybe be percentage reduction or something like that as opposed to a pure.
But then who's gonna do that analysis?
It would
The
have to be
applicant
something,
would have to.
it'd have to be a city's best guess in their application. I mean, I don't know that they're all doing launch studies ahead of time for some of these smaller kind of projects. Like, for example, they might have a bike path project that's in their CIP. They may not have an associated calculation of potential trip reductions for that specific project. So a lot of these projects are not going to be mega freeway projects that have been like an I-105, for example, that have full on modeling or
Right.
that kind of level of analysis done.
Right, and then I guess it seems like they're could be opportunity of understanding what a city can provide and what the IWG would be evaluating. So I guess the concern is that I'm a IWG subcommittee evaluator, and I'm looking at, I read this and it says, the city says, oh, we relieve congestion. Check, 30 points. Versus really looking at it across proposals and saying, maybe they can't say exactly, it will reduce congestion by 30%. But I think there needs to be a little bit more so that there's some level setting and evaluation of.
It's my understanding though, that a city can't just say this is gonna relieve congestion.
I know, I'm
They
just
have to
giving an
explain-
example.
No, but they have to
Yeah.
explain how it's gonna, why they think it's gonna be able to relieve congestion. And if you're asking for some kind of a quantitative thing, then it would seem to me that we'd have to have some kind of a standard. Because one city could qualify it one way and another city could qualify it
And
another way.
that's why you
So-
might get
And the
guidelines.
COG would have to do all of this evaluation, which we would have to get a consultant because we don't have the expertise. So, I mean, I think, I guess what I would suggest,
Mhm, mhm.
because I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. What I would suggest is, right now, we have criteria. They'd like to change the criteria. So if we don't vote on this, we have the old criteria. So I would suggest that you vote on this and direct the infrastructure working group to see how they can quantify this and what ways they suggest to do it. But to actually adopt this at this point.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, my observation is, we're suggesting something new, right? But with that being said, here's the working group that's now got, 20 projects. I'm just pulling something out of the hat, right? So they're gonna say, well, you scored this, and you scored it that way, right? Kind of the, yay, very, hey, we'll meet it all 30, right? But I think once you have that dialogue, comparing projects to projects, I think that's when it'll bear fruit that, well, how did you score it this way? How did you score it that way, and adjust accordingly, right? And then the other point I think you made is the COG has essentially funded everything, right? I mean, within reason, right? So we don't want this to be more onerous than it needs to be. But, there's gonna be some subjectivity to it.
Yes.
But at least, as the working group works at this, I think we'll have a better clarity on what does that really mean? Once you start putting pencil to paper and comparing projects.
You're looking for I've got all that.
Okay.
I got all that, yes. Looking for a motion to approve recommend approval to the board with further deep dive into the, how we might be able to quantify it at the IWG.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Get a word in edgeways. Yeah, let's go.
Any opposition? Any abstention? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you,
I'm going
everybody.
to run into Measure R real quick. This is our annual program update for the Measure R Highway Program. As you all know, we asked cities to recommit to their existing Measure R projects earlier in the summer, and then recommend any for deobligation that we're not able to move forward for any reason. And then we also asked cities to make mention for any additional funding requests they might have for existing projects. Memo detailed the requests that we received. There were two projects identified for deobligation. There were 4 requests for additional funding, and then 1 scope of work modification that the city asked us to approve. No additional funding. I want to point out that there was one project on this list that has a gigantic asterisk next to it. The LA City project on Alameda Street. They've requested 8.4 million in additional funding. However, this project is tied up right now in the Vincent Thomas Bridge redecking project. Alameda Street would be a potential detour route while the bridge is closed. And so the city of LA is currently working with Caltrans to figure out if there is time to do the Alameda Street project in advance of the closure. It does not look like it. And if we ultimately decide to delay the Alameda Street project, the city will be rescinding this $8 million request this year. And we've been in communication with the city that we need that by next Thursday when our board agenda packet goes out, so. The 8.4 million is pretty much the bulk of the 11 million being requested this cycle for additional funds. But we anticipate that we have enough funding to approve or to honor that request if it's ultimately maintained. So we'd be looking for a recommendation to the board to approve this annual program.
Questions? Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any opposition? Any abstentions?
Can't vote, right?
And then-
No, but I mean, I just want you to, Mayor, but you can't vote because we didn't get your 2449.
Yeah, it's.
Okay, then I won't vote.
There you go.
So there.
No,
Thank you.
Thank you all. I think on
David, could I
Yeah.
ask one question on the last page of that? The project in RPV, Western Avenue from PV North to 25th Street, it says de-obligated.
yeah, so that was originally a PSR is a project study report, which is kind of the early study work. That was an old Measure R project that has been moved to, the funding of that has been moved to Measure M. So the actual work of it is being done through Measure M.
So it's going forward.
It's going forward, it's just, yeah, that's an old project that's no longer, it's not Measure M. Okay, on the 3-month look ahead, I think the only major things, let's see, next month, we have, I was able. Our chair had talked about the automated rail presenter. That's going to be in April, I think, March or April. I have a whole bunch of pending ones. Yeah, there's 2 that are coming up. One is parallel and one is glide. I believe we have one in April and one in March.
Yeah.
I will add those to the next version. Our Measure M annual program update will be coming to you all in April. And then we have a Metro fiscal year 25-6 budget presentation. I think that's all at this point.
Okay.
Hey, David, can I make sure that if we have those presentations around the automated rail, because it touches the 710 issues in the long term, can we send an extra love note to make sure we get all the supervisors and all the people who may be interested in those sorts of things? Because it will span districts and reach outside the COG.
Sure.
We'll make that happen, Chris. Okay, so without any further business, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Robert.
Thank you.